Welcome to episode 3 of Unfiltered. I'm Ken Minster, and I'll be sitting down with Nevada's Republican state legislators to provide an unfiltered view of their work in the 81st legislative session in Carson City. In this fun interview with Assemblyman Greg Hafen, we talk about his family, his goals, and his strategy to just try to get something good done for rural Nevada in this wildly partisan legislative session. He's a genuine, thoughtful elected official who is also a small business owner and a proud dad. Enjoy. What do you do in your personal life? Yeah, I heard you say you're on the hospital board. What do you do in your personal life?
So I run a number of our family and small businesses. My main job is we've got a small water and sewer company.
Oh,
Uh,
nice.
so I'm the general manager there, and I joke I've got a license in sewer, wastewater. I mean, my son is 4, so his favorite thing is like poop right now, right? So we ride the bikes down to the sewer plant. I just check on things on the weekends when I'm home, and he thinks it's funny. And I'm like, yeah, when you flush the toilet, where it comes and it gets treated, and then look, the water comes out clean. And so he's fascinated by it, and which is good because I get to go down to the wastewater plant and check on things and make sure. And he's getting a kick out of it, and yeah, it's fun.
That's
And
cool. That's cool. My dad has a license in poop. That's great.
that's right. And so we were actually, so I was, whole COVID thing, I was taking online continuing ed classes, and the instructor said that we're basically drinking dinosaur pee. And my son just died laughing. And it was like, it was like a good 20 minutes of just straight laughter. And I was like, that's great. They, I mean, you sit through a Zoom continuing ed class, but if you got a 4-year-old laughing his pants, and it's hey,
I'm
hey,
30. I'm 32, and I laugh at that. That's funny. It was actually really funny. That's cool. So you got a little 4-year-old son. What's your son's name?
Harrison.
Harrison. That's awesome. That's very cool. Are we middle of session yet? Are we halfway
Yeah,
point?
we're past the halfway point.
Past
We're
halfway point.
we have less than 2 months remaining, so
It's good because then you guys can just shove it all in the last 3 days of session. So that'll be perfect. You just wait until
that's right. We'll spend 3 days not get any sleep. Luckily, I got a couch that's semi-comfortable. Take a power nap for 5 minutes in those 3 days.
Yep, and then get back to a committee or whatever you're doing. So, no, that's cool. Tell me a little bit about yourself, where you represent, where you're from, stuff like that. I want to get to know you just a little bit, Greg.
Yeah, so I'm from Pahrump, Nevada. I represent Assembly District 36, which is uh, it's a big portion of the state. I go from Caliente down to Logandale, and then over to Sandy Valley, Pahrump, up to Tonopah, over to Round Mountain, and the test site. So not as big as Senator Gokachia's, because he's got the other half of this, and he goes to the Idaho border all the way down to the Arizona border. It's kind of crazy.
Is Goldfield in there too?
I think Goldfield is excluded from my district because I think I follow the county line.
Oh, that's right. That's right. It goes right
So
around there, right?
I'm thinking that that's part of Assemblywoman Hanson's
Hanson.
district.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's cool. All those cool towns are so much fun, and such great people that live in, these very small towns all across the state. Everybody always thinks of Vegas and Reno, but you know, there's some wonderful people, and they have people like you. My grandmother lives in Pahrump, so to
Oh,
get a
okay.
letter from her, don't be mad. So that's great. So you represent 36. What committees do you have this session?
So right now I'm actually really busy because I've got Ways and Means. As everybody knows, we have a little bit of a budget shortfall, is what they call it. I call it. It looks like about the same as 2018. So let's just go back to that. Because for some reason my colleagues across the aisle don't see eye to eye with me on that one. And then I serve on Health and Human Services, which during a pandemic has been very interesting. And I also serve on Revenue, which last session was called Taxation. Um, which we haven't done a lot in that committee, which is probably good for Nevada that we're not seeing a lot of taxation bills come forward. But the big time consumer for me is Ways and Means. I had a joint meeting this morning, and I got another one tonight at 6. It'll probably last a couple hours. So,
What when on these committees, what are you looking out for in Ways and Means? And so you obviously that big budget shortfall that they're talking about. I've tried to explain this to people that what they ask for versus what's actually getting cut and stuff like that. Can you talk a little bit about that budget shortfall, and then does the CARES Act money from the federal government are you guys talking about that in Ways and Means right now?
so two parts. The CARES Act money, we've had an initial conversation about um, what some of the ideas, at least that the Democrats wanted. It went to vote, and it was a complete partisan vote, just straight party lines, because the Republicans have the philosophy that, hey, we shouldn't be spending money that we don't have yet, and we don't know what the restrictions on those funds are going to be. So we're hesitant to commit funds, even in concept. I mean, we really want to be able to see. They may earmark every single dollar, and we have no control over anything. Or it might be like it is today, and we could do whatever it is that we want with it. Um, and so I think that that's something that's better suited for when we actually get the funds. In regards to the budget itself, you've got the agency request, the governor's proposal, and then you have kind of our working documents, which is what we use to close out the budgets for each department. And we've been following the governor's recommendations quite a bit more than the agencies. But we do feel like in certain areas, there's needs that the agencies bring to our attention that we have to backfill. Um, like there's an item on tonight's agenda for printers, and one of the departments needs all new printers. And they do. I mean, just looking at it, they definitely do need that, and that wasn't included in the governor's budget. And so I would assume that that's going to pass tonight. I don't see any objections, and things like that. New computers, software, equipment, things like that, kind of gets overlooked when you're doing an overall budget. But when you start getting into the weeds, is when you start seeing the need for that.
I've got a couple of HP bubble jet printers back here. If you want me to ship them up to Carson City, I hope that can help. What?
Perfect.
Yeah, hope that'll help. How do DETR is a big. Everybody's talking about DETR being unable to fulfill requests. You know, it was hard. It would be hard, I would admit, to expect a pandemic like we had and the stressors that would happen on the unemployment system for Nevada. What are you guys doing to prepare for that? What are the agencies that you're looking at that like you said have those needs requests and you're like, okay, we have to fulfill this. We have to be ready for the next one.
So I'm also sitting in on the interim finance committee, um, which is not a subcommittee of the legislature. It's an interim committee. Um, and so what we've been doing in the interim finance committee, or IFC, is taking some of the federal stimulus money under the Trump administration and applying it to areas of need, specifically to DETR, because we know that there's a big hole there that needs to be filled. And so we have been doing a lot of that, which I think is good. It's much needed. And we also have been using a lot of our legislative staff to try to help people get through the process with DETR, which it's been helpful for both the individuals and for DETR, because every request that I get, I send over to our staff, and they've been absolutely wonderful. They'll help everybody get their packets put together. So when they submit, it's just a one-time submittal. A lot of times what happens is you're 4 to 6 weeks to get your submittal in, and then you're told, oh, you forgot something. And now you're another 4 to 6 weeks. And it really drags out the process. Whereas with my staff helping them make sure that they've got all their documents lined up, it's only that first waiting period. They're not continuously waiting.
Oh, that's very cool. I'm glad to hear you're allocating those resources to that. Um, tell me a little bit about, is there anything in the assembly right now to deal with DETR? I mean, is there something are you guys allocating more funds? Or you just that casework side that you're talking about? What are we doing to address that and get that fixed? I mean, it's been more than a year.
So yeah, there's a few things. One, we have allocated those CARES funds. Um, in addition to that, we are looking at upgrading the DETR's computer system. Um, Personally, I think it's outdated and in desperate need of revamping. So we're looking at different ways of how that might work, and how much that'll cost. Um, Personally, I would love to see it outsourced. Um, and so that way, if you use a third party vendor, they can be continuously updating the software, the computer systems, even create an app. I mean, we live in an app world now. And so it make things a lot easier for people if they could just go on an app. It's constantly being updated. We'll see how that all pans out. I'm not sure which direction the other side of the aisle is going to want to go with that. But I think we all agree that we need to upgrade their computer software and systems, and maybe move over to the cloud. And that'd be a good bump for us. I think it would save us some money. We are looking at spending some funds on some servers for different agencies. And
Good.
I know in my personal business, I looked at the price of my own personal server when I had to upgrade and go in cloud, and I was like, yeah, that's a no-brainer. I'm going cloud. I'm not even going to try to
Yeah.
have my own server anymore.
No, that's good that they're looking at that. I mean, I know you've seen the jokes of, if Chick-fil-A were running unemployment claims, they'd all be long done by now. It's
Yeah.
crazy. I highly doubt they'll want to outsource it, but hopefully you can make some headway there.
Yeah. Well, and for clarification, it's not outsourcing DETR. It's
Sure,
just
sure,
gonna outsource the software and or an app or however that ends up panning out.
sure. No, that's great. Um, Tell me, Greg, what are you bringing from Pahrump to Carson City? What are people in your district telling you is their priority, and how are you translating that into your work in Carson City? What's top of mind for them, and what are you helping them to understand should be top of mind, stuff like that? What's the priorities look like?
So my number one priority coming up here is trying to preserve rural Nevada. Um, Las Vegas has a whole unique perspective that's completely different than rural Nevada. And I know Reno's got a little bit of Vegas in them, but it is different as well. And so it's for me, it's trying to explain to my colleagues, hey, this is why rural Nevada needs this, or here's where your bill is going to really hurt rural Nevada. And I know you don't mean to do that because I mean they don't. I mean it's unintended consequences. But when I can point that out to them and be like, you just do this little tweak here or a little tweak there, you'll still preserve the rural aspects and the benefits and still get what you're looking to do in your bill, but without the negative side effects. And so that's always my number one priority is looking out for the rural Nevadans and making sure that those unintended consequences don't hurt rural Nevada.
I feel like those are good priorities. I talked to Assemblywoman Haiti Kasama about that, and her big thing is unintended consequences as well. She's a realtor. She's like, yeah, the bill looks like this, but outside of the bill, it's all of this. And I'm
Right.
sure for rural Nevada, that's a big deal. Is there anything lands related that rural Nevada needs to look for this session? I mean, all I hear from the media is eggs, cage-free eggs by 2024, stuff like that. What about water? Is there a lands bill that we need to look out for? What's rural Nevada watching?
So water is always a very hot topic in this building, and frankly, anytime a water bill comes up, it scares me. I get very, very nervous when they try to mess around with water law. And most of the time, I'm playing defense when it comes to changes in Nevada water law. Nevada water law is based on first in time, first and right, and I am very hesitant to ever want to make changes to that. Now, I will say Senator Gokachia carried a good water bill last session, and I supported it. But it was a very, very small water bill that just made a minor tweak that actually was helpful to helpful to Logandale and the Mappa Valley Water District there. So it was
It's
very, very
awesome.
to support that one.
No, that's a win for that part of the state. That's awesome. Or I'm glad to hear that there's a win for that part of the state. Um, Tell me a little bit. We're talking about bills getting passed. Um, I feel like this session and the assembly put out recently that a very low number of Republican bills are actually making it through committee, making it to the floor, and obviously passage is another light year away. What's it like up there for getting Republican? What's the partisan world like for getting Republican bills through right now?
Um, I wish I had good news for you, but I really don't. It's been more partisan this session than I think ever before, which is really disappointing to me. And I'm not saying that all Democrats are partisan or Republicans are all partisan, um, but there are select few who are just partisan and they don't want to see Republicans get a win. I've actually had one of them tell me they don't want to see that Republican get a victory. And to me, it's not about legislators getting a victory. It's about doing what's right for Nevada um, and its citizens. And so I hear somebody say something like that, and I'm like, you're missing the point of serving your state. You're serving the people of the state, not serving yourself. Um, and so that's frustrating to me. And obviously, Friday was a deadline day, so we saw a lot of that last week. If you'd asked me a few weeks ago, I probably would have had a different answer for you. But last week, you saw a lot of that stuff come out. And again, I had colleagues on the other side of the aisle that are not like that, and they look at the bigger picture and what's best for Nevada. And they're really in this for the right reasons.
No, it's good to hear that there are some. I think my biggest deal that people don't get is that I feel like confidence in government, obviously starting at the federal level down, is just extremely low, right? People just think, obviously Congress is just not that effective, and the state legislature could be effective, right? I mean, I feel like I can tell that's a frustration amongst, a lot of people. Is it's like, you know, if we could work together, people would like all of us more, not you less. I'm assuming.
Well, and that's a great point. I mean, my priority bills this session um, came from my neighbors. I mean, and my friends that live in my community. They weren't my priorities weren't like big, huge, partisan, hoorah bills. They were my priorities were looking out for my people in rural Nevada and what was best. I had a small bill that would give free parking to our decorated veterans. I thought that was a great bill. I got a hearing on it. It actually would have given the chairwoman free parking because her father died from complications to injuries in war, and she would qualify for that certain decorated license plate, and she could have gotten free parking, but it never went to work session, and so it died in committee. But I'm still working hard for it because veterans are a very important part of our state, especially those that have given the ultimate sacrifice, like her father. And I'm very thankful for him. But I would have loved to have seen that be implemented into law so we could, give back to those decorated veterans.
Yeah, and I mean, I would expect them to kill a bill that was like Republican veterans get free parking and not Democrat. Like that's
Right.
not how the world is working. That's not what you guys are trying to do. It's very difficult. Um what can we do about that? I know the world is partisan right now. I know that it's not just Nevada. I get that. But what are you specifically and the caucus going to be able to do, or what can we do to support you to fix that, right? To make that better for next session, and what do we do?
Well, so right now, our assembly caucus is playing a lot of defense right now. We're in the minority in both houses, and our governor's a Democrat, so we don't have a lot of offensive chips to play here, but we do have some defensive ones, and so we're strategically, doing that and playing defense. Um, the biggest thing, though, that I could say for all of us to do is unite for 2022. Um, if we can get the governor to turn Republican, the Senate to flip, and pick up some more seats in the assembly, we won't be in this position where we're always playing defense. If the Senate goes Republican, the governor's office goes Republican, even if we're not able to completely flip the assembly, both sides have to work together, right? And so I'm trying to get the message out to unite behind our incumbents, our Republican candidates, whoever they may end up being. Um, I hate seeing these ugly, drawn out fights amongst our own Republicans. I firmly believe in Reagan's 11th commandment to not talk ill of other Republicans. And so I just really trying to push that message and just remind people that, 2022 is the goal, and to flip this state, so we don't run into this problem anymore. And I think it's really important to help our incumbents right now, give them a pat on the back instead of beat them up, because every single one of us is being beat down on a daily basis up here. And some people may not like a vote here or a vote there, but it's not the end of the world. And just remember that we're all up here fighting for you, and don't let that one vote deter you from thanking your legislators and the individuals that are up here working hard to help preserve Nevada.
No, that's great. It's difficult for me because, I was a political consultant, not necessarily a good one, but I was a political consultant before, and we've worked in multiple states, and it just, there are certain states where we can have these infighting, right? We can, jab at each other and spend money to try to get each other unelected and stuff like as Republicans. Nevada's not one of them. I just don't. We don't have that kind of money. We don't have that kind of time to be wasting on, decrying each other. We can disagree with each other all day. Every Republican is different, but censuring each other and trying to beat each other up to the point where we want to get one unelected. We just don't have time for that here in Nevada. And I think I agree with you that it's a very big problem.
And especially not right now. I mean, it's just like you said, we don't have the money, where the Democrats have lots and lots of money to fight against us. And so we need to be conscious about how we're using our resources for the end goal. And I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah. What brought you to be here for office? And so you were appointed and then you ran. What brought you to run for office and continue serving, if you will, finish out that term? What brought you here, and why'd you start?
Well, I'm probably going to have to blame my grandfather. It was kind of a way I was raised, is that you always have to give back to your community. And so you have to find ways that to use your talents to help your community. And so I've been serving, on our local hospital board for probably 14 years now. I spent almost 10 years on the Regional Planning Commission. And at the time I was appointed, I was actually chairman of the Planning Commission there in Pahrump. And I put my name in as a way that I thought that I could give back to our community in our state. And again, that's something that was instilled in me from my grandfather, because he's always been serving on every different board. So he spent 8 years in the assembly, was Speaker pro temp, and he actually was president of the Farm Bureau for, he'd say forever, but I know there was a length of time in there. I just don't recollect.
That's cool. Yeah, Hafen. I've definitely heard that name before you a million times. No, that's good. Why are you a Republican? What is the driving force of it? Just seems very unpopular these days, right? It's just that scarlet R on your chest up in Carson City. I'm sure that if they didn't know your party, they'd love you a lot more. Why are you a Republican, and why are you still a Republican today, Greg?
My mother was Catholic, and I grew up Catholic. My parents never pushed a particular party on me, and they kind of let me make my own decision of who I was and who I wanted to be. And I just looked at the morals and the values of the different political parties, and found that the Republican Party aligned more with my values, the free enterprise, the capitalist, the pro-life. And so that's why I became a Republican. And I'm also a businessman. I think most at least small businessmen are Republicans nowadays. And so, yeah, that's kind of why I chose to be part of the Republican Party when I turned 18 and registered for the first time.
Yeah, Greg, it's after that first $1 or $2 billion that you make that you start to donate to Democrats. So I get you. Once you hit that billion, maybe you'll turn Democrat. For now, you're.
I don't think so.
Hopefully not.
I think I'm part of this party for life.
Good, good. I'm glad to hear that. Speaking of, rich billionaires donating to Democrats, I know you introduced a bill about big tech companies, and everybody, made fun of you and say, "Oh my gosh, the silly bill that Greg is doing." Can you tell me why you introduced, and give me the title, give me the whatever it was. I know, it's dead now, but why did you do it? Why is that important to you?
I appreciate that, and yeah, I did get laughed at, and there was a really great article written about how stupid of an idea it was.
I read every word, so
I,
I,
so to me, I looked at what Twitter did to President Trump, and then I look at how they are completely biased in that. I mean, they let the leader of Iran continue to this day to send out tweets. And for them to say that the leader of the free world is not allowed to tweet for violating what? Nothing? Oh, okay. And even after he was acquitted, they still haven't let him back. They didn't let him back on. And so I wanted to carry a bill that said, you can't do that. You cannot discriminate based on political differences. If you're going to be a quote unquote neutral platform, then you need to be that. And so I saw what Governor DeSantis was doing in Florida. I saw what Texas was doing. And so I reached out to both of them. I reached out to Governor DeSantis's office. I reached out to the Texas Senate and got a lot of really good information from them. And then tried to figure out, okay, how do I tweak this to make it work in Nevada? And so actually kind of a short bill. I think it was only 2 pages long, but really set the parameters for the discussion and saying, hey, this is what we want you to do. And if you don't, then these are going to be classified as deceptive trade practices. And then you're going to be subject to the penalties under that NRS. And, I had some great conversations with a number of different media outlets. I reached out to my colleagues. I had a couple of the Democrats that were kind of interested in having the conversation, but I could never convince the chairwoman to have a hearing on it. Though maybe we could go across the street, grab beers, and stream it live, and just have our own little workshop. We'll call it a workshop, not a hearing, and talk some more. Talk about the pluses and the minuses, and and I would feel the same way if Twitter was doing this to President Biden right now.
Yes.
If they were trying to limit his free speech, I would be really upset about it as well, because I don't think that it's right. And I think that social media has now become, the best way of communicating, and I don't use Twitter now. Still have my handle, but I stopped using it because I just go, you know what? I don't need to do that. I kind of feel like, hey, I'm going to send my own message to them and saying, I don't appreciate what you're doing. I don't think it's right. And until you guys fix it, I'm just not going to tweet. So I still use Facebook for now. If they start doing a lot more of that, I might have to reevaluate my social media platforms.
We'll post this interview exclusively on MySpace, so I hope you're on there because you can see it.
I'm not on MySpace. I might have to get one now.
No, Greg, I feel the same way. If Parler, right? Let's say Parler were still on live, and I think they're coming back or whatever. But My Pillow guy is sending out his social media network soon. Okay, if President Biden, the official White House account, was on Parler or on My Pillow or whatever the account is, and they were devaluing their tweets or their shares, or they were taking them off the platform, or they were I wouldn't want that either. I don't want to silence democratic voices or, leftists. It's not Democrats, it's leftists. And I don't want to silence communists. I don't want to silence Antifa. They have a right to speak. They don't have a right to break windows, but they have a right to speak. And I thought people like the ACLU and people like the left loved that. I thought that's what we were for. And it's difficult for me that because popular culture, whatever, maybe popular culture is on their side, that it's okay. We're like, oh, well, he says mean tweets, so it's okay to get rid of him. I think the biggest story, and I'm sure you heard about this, is the Hunter Biden story that the New York Post broke before the election, and then Twitter closed down the New York Post's account through election day. Because they didn't like the story. And then we find out, however, it's been, 4 or 5 months, we now know that story was true, or at least parts of it were true.
And Ken, part of it is that if you keep segregating, the Republicans are going to all go to Parler and the Democrats are going to be on Twitter, it's just a bunch of empty yelling.
Yeah.
And there's no debate actually occurring. And I mean, I go to my Democrat colleagues. I want to understand where their side of the argument is, and maybe they could help explain it to me. I mean, there was a bill. I don't remember the bill now, but when I read the bill, I was like, "No, I can't support this." And then I went to the bill sponsor, and she explained it to me a little bit further. She showed me the return on investment, and I'm like, "Oh, wow, I can actually get behind this. This is actually a good bill." And it's things like that that we need to be doing. Is we need to go in with an open mind. Yeah, I said no, I can't support this. But when I finally, reached out to her and talked to her about her bill and learned, why she was doing it and what the long term, return was going to be for the state, I was like, this is actually great for the state. And yeah, it'll cost us money up front, but it will save us a lot. I mean, the end of the year in 10 years, it's going to save us hundreds of millions of dollars based on the projections. And so I'm like, yeah, I mean, if you're fiscally responsible conservative, you should be all about things like this.
And seeing past the headlines too. That's great. I'm so glad to hear that story. I think that's what normal people do, right? I mean, we live in this political bubble now, and God bless you for not being on Twitter every day. You're probably a very much happier man because of it. But
I am.
that's what yeah, I believe you. Normal people do that. They go, "Hey, can you tell me a little bit about this so that I can know more?" And that it's hard to do that these days in this partisan environment. I bet it really is. Um, well, my last sort of question, I want to know what do you or my last serious question, then I'll ask you about what you're reading right now. But what do you think we as Republicans, what should we do to get more people to register Republican and join the party, join our cause, and beyond that, maybe they don't register Republican, but at least vote more people to vote Republican, so we can get more assemblymen, more senators to come up there. What is Greg Hafen's philosophy on that? What should we be doing?
Well, my philosophy is just embrace everyone. It doesn't matter which side of the spectrum, the political spectrum you're on, left, right. A lot of people look at it left and right like this, right, straight line. Realistically, we all start here, and then when you start getting out to the fringe issues, you actually get back together again. Great example: AOC and Rand Paul were the two biggest advocates against this was it the last stimulus package or the CARES Act? I can't remember which one, but one of the stimulus packages, both of them, far right, far left, both agreeing that I think they were agreeing that spending money on all these foreign nations for COVID purposes was not a good idea. And as Republicans, we need to realize that, hey, there are going to be, Ken, you and I can disagree on an item here and there, but we're going to agree on 90% of it. And that, some of our independent colleagues, they may not agree with us on 60% of it, but they agree with us on 40, or maybe it's 60 they agree and 40 they disagree. And really try to relate to them and not tune them out and say, hey, look, I'm a Republican, you're an independent. but here's my stance on these issues, and where is it for you? And be respectful when there's a disagreement on that. I just think that that's really, really important, rather than a strict hard line. You either are pro-life, or you're not one of us, or you're. I'm trying to think of another polarizing thing. I'm reading the war
Infrastructure.
on
I was saying.
yeah, that one. You're either for infrastructure or against it. We don't need that major divide.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, the conservative platform has their priorities, but I don't want to alienate somebody because they, today have a mindset on one issue, and then, I don't want to be part of them because that's their issue. No, I want to look, 90% of our issues you agree with us on.
Yeah.
We can get past that one. We can have conversations about it, and maybe you'll change my mind, and maybe I'll change your mind, and who knows? But that's kind of my thing, is have an open mind and talk things out.
It's a crazy philosophy to get more people to at least talk. That's a crazy philosophy. I don't know if it's going to work, but hopefully, hopefully it can. Last, final thing I ask everybody: what are you? I know you're reading bills. I know you're reading, committee reports and stuff like that. But what are you reading or watching on TV right now? What's at the top of your mind when you get to your, Carson City flat? I don't know what they have you in up there, but what are you reading right now?
So I actually, right before this, was reading an oral history of my grandfather that he had done. I stumbled across it while looking at previous legislation and trying to get some of the historical background on some of the stuff we're doing up here. And so I was reading that right before we got started. The book that I'm reading right now is The War on Guns. Assemblywoman Hanson turned me on to that, and I'm finally getting around to reading it. As far as watching, during the lockdown, I binge watched all the Marvel movies in chronological order. Now I'm switching over to DC, and so I'm watching the Batman movies.
Yes. Have you seen the Snyder cut of Justice League yet?
No, I haven't. I
It
hear
took
it's 4 hours though, and I'm just like, I just don't have 4 hours. I can the Batmans that I've seen, because they're just on in the background while I'm
right.
going to bills and trying to do my day job. By the way, I do have a day job because we're not exactly getting paid up here right now.
That's right.
I got to do both, and to have a little bit of noise on in the background,
Yeah.
something I've already seen before.
It's 4 hours long. It's a masterpiece. It's so good. I took me, I think, 5 nights, not every single night, but it took me like 5 where I was sitting and watching, because it's 4 hours long, but it's so good. The War on Guns sounds cool. I hope you get through all of the DC movies. Some of them are very, very good. Shazam is a weird one. I don't know if you've seen. It's a DC movie. It's a sleeper. It's really good.
I'll have to add it to my list.
Yeah, it's really good. Assemblyman, I really appreciate your time. I appreciate you serving Nevadans up there. Is there anything that you want to plug as a final thing for people watching today? Things that they can do to help you up in session or just politically?
Always support your legislators that are up here. Send them an email, just saying thank you. I mean, those little things go a long way, because morale can be rough up here when you're in the minority, especially when you're in the minority in both houses. And if anybody wants to reach out to me, you can call me. My number here is 775-684-8805. Or you can get all my Facebook, email stuff on my website, which is Hafen, 4, Nevada.com.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I'll plug that when we, sort of post this. But appreciate you, and we'll leave it there. Thank you so much, Greg. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Kim.